Good morning, all. Happy Sunday. Hope you're well. I have a bit of an interesting and different video I wanted to shoot today. Actually, looking at restoring one of these Visconti Divina fountain pens. It's a bit of a story that goes behind it. I was in Melbourne recently and visited somebody who listed one for sale on Marketplace. It actually turned out he had a couple. He had two of the Divina fountain pens and actually one of the Divina ballpoint pens that he was selling as well. Now, these are the older model celluloid based Divinas in the Desert Springs colour, which is a very, very pretty celluloid finish. So, quite a gorgeous pen. And they came with their palladium, 23 carat palladium nib, which I love. The old palladium Visconti nibs, they're just gorgeous. One of these pens, though, well, actually, a few of them, to be honest, were in very, very bad shape. I'll show you some footage now and some videos and photos now.
Evening also, this is the pen which looks like it was dropped or had something dropped on it. Potentially it's dinted on both sides there. Looks like it was squished. So celluloid is quite good when you heat it up. It does get quite warm and quite soft. So I'm going to just heat it with some hot water, just run it under a hot tap and just soften it up a little bit, and then just use some pliers, and I'm going to just try to really softly push it and hopefully it pops back into shape, but we will see how we go.
One of them was completely squished. One of them had, actually, a few of them had very, very bad damage to the celluloid. And at first I thought, I don't want to have anything to do with that, but I was interested and sort of thought these pens are in such bad condition, I would love to give a go at actually restoring them. So that's what I want to take you through today, actually looking at the process I've put behind restoring these pens, and I guess a bit of an update on how they're all tracking. I've had a few people who I've told I'm looking to restore them sort of reach out interested to see what I've done. So I thought I'd take you through today, but effectively we've got one of the Divinas which is still in bits. So we've got the different bits of the pen still here. We've got the barrel, which is looking much better. So I'll talk about the barrel firstly, in factly. So this barrel, as you saw earlier, was squished, was completely squished. And as you can see now, I'm going to hope that's going to focus for me. You can see it is in much better shape. It's much cleaner and much shinier as well. It was almost matte before. It was in very, very bad shape. So what I had to do for it, to be honest, was Google. And Google was great, but there isn't a lot on restoring old Viscontis on Google, understandably. But the celluloid material is quite heat resistant. So if you do heat it up to an extent, it does get very, very soft. There were a few people on one of the fountain pen groups online who talked about using a heat gun on celluloid and moulding it that way, which I thought was interesting. I tried just running it under a hot tap of hot water. That wasn't anywhere near hot enough. So in the end, I actually boiled some water and put the celluloid barrel in the boiling water for about a minute before taking it out, and it was very, very soft. And I was able to, as you can see, squish it back into shape. It's an interesting shape, the Divina. It's not circular, it's kind of faceted, got this interesting sort of swirl going through it, which made it very, very hard to mould. And the other issue with trying to mould this barrel was it was set very, very quickly. So as soon as you take it out of the water, you had maybe 5 seconds before it just got rock hard once again. So it was not an easy process and took lots and lots of different trial and error, having a bar inside it so I can squish it further. There were a lot of different things, but very, very happy with how that has come out for the moment. The cap, as you can see or saw, was also in very, very bad shape, and I've done quite a lot of polishing on the cap with a Synchrome polish to get it looking much nicer. As you can see now, it looks so much better than it did, which that's so great to see. The clip, I used a metal polish on it, and same with the top cap, I used a polish as well. This took a lot of polishing, but I'm very, very happy with that result and how lovely and shiny that is now. These celluloid barrels, if you look on the inside, it's not a finish, it's actually, that's the colour of the celluloid, so it meant I could take a little bit off the top, and that's what I've had to do, is actually just polish it off. I was going to use sandpaper, I was just so resistant. I used a little bit of micro mesh to start, that helped get off the top layer, but I was very, very careful with not wanting to scratch it any further. But it was an interesting point for this pen, because it was in such bad condition that I always thought, well, if I just make it worse, there's not much worse I can do, right? It's effectively, it doesn't work. It didn't fill up with ink, was the next issue, which I thought potentially could have been a bit of a deal breaker. I would turn, so if I show you on the working model how these pens work, effectively, you've got this little pull knob at the end which turns, and that fills ink up into the pen, similar to a piston filler, but it's obviously a bit different to a piston filler. And once it's full, you push your little cap down and you're ready to go. On the damaged one, I would turn it up, turn it down, and just no ink would go into the pen. And I thought, I don't really know how these systems work. I was really a bit stuck. And again, very little to no information online as to how this sort of system works. In the end, I actually was heated up the barrel quite a lot and was able to unscrew the section and the barrel, which was one of the first things I did. And as I'll show you the picture now, you can see you've actually got a captive converter, is what they call it. So it's actually just a converter, a regular Schmidt Visconti converter inside the pen. They actually glue in. And you've got this metal bar, as you can see here, that actually, hopefully you can see there, that actually just sits on top of the converter. So it just means that I was actually a massive relief, because it meant it was going to be a much easier fix than having to replace a piston or fix it in any other regard. So if we look at the converter there, that's a regular Schmidt converter, and this piece will just sit on the top like that and turn up and down, and then that obviously just slides up and down inside the pen. So you would pull that up and push that down as you need. So that was really good to see, because it meant it was fixable, really. There was quite a bit of effort getting all the glue off the converter. In fact, I ended up replacing the converter itself. It seemed the problem was the old converter. These pens are probably 20 plus years old, if not older than that. So the converter had actually cracked. It had pretty well disintegrated, which was of course why it wasn't filling. So I've gone and I've bought another converter. This is the Schmidt K5 converter, and I actually put the little Visconti little finial detail on there from the old one. So not that you need to do that, you wouldn't see it anyway, but I just thought it was a nice little touch that I've done there. So that was that. Hopefully that issue fixed, but there was quite a bit of effort getting that together. So the next issue, because there were quite a few issues, was getting it all apart, getting it all cleaned before I put it all back together. So we have your section as such, which comes as a little two-piece part, and we also have a little plastic connector piece, really. So this will screw in on one side to the barrel, and the other side, the section friction fits over the top, if you can see that there. So that's how it'll all fit together. And then the nib section, so the nib on this pen, thankfully, was in very, very good condition. Was actually beautiful condition, and an old palladium nib, as you can see there as well. So the condition of the nib was excellent. So the nib will actually thread into your little connector piece. So that this is kind of how it all holds together. So you've got your connector piece, and the nib will screw into that, and then the section will friction fit over the top, and the barrel will screw into the bottom. So that's the theory. Once again, this connector little piece, if we can see it up close, was full of glue. It was yellow with glue, as you saw in that picture earlier. So there was so much work getting all this glue out of the little middle section connector piece. But and I had to do it, had to get it all out, because otherwise it wouldn't refit back together, and I didn't want to be putting something back together that's kind of has glue and all sorts of gross bits in it. So that was really important that I had to do that. So what we've got now is we've got a pen which is all in parts, but it is effectively cleaned. So you've got your cap and barrel, which have been formed. You've also got your section, which is ready to go. You've got your little plastic connector bit for the middle. You've obviously got your nib. So the nib will sit in a little collar. It can actually come out of the collar, and I did pull it out and give it a really good clean, but effectively the nib and collar are one assembly. And then obviously you've got your little filling knob, which goes on the top of the converter. So we will see how it all goes back together. I will have you change the camera angle so we can see it all. My first thought is getting a little bit of Gorilla Glue, potentially, to glue your section back into your little connector piece. Maybe not required, but I feel like it's not something I want ever coming out again. So that might be the first step. And then after that, I will put together the piston into the nib assembly. I'll screw all that in, and hopefully it'll work. So let's see how we go. Come along with me. Okay, so here are all the parts as I spoke about earlier. You can see the nib and assembly, obviously the new converter and the converter piece, as well as your section and your connector area, as well as the cap and the barrel. So they're all your bits to your pen. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to use a little bit of Araldite, or epoxy, sorry, Gorilla Glue epoxy. Whether or not it's the best thing to use, I'm not 100% sure. A little bit, and what we're going to do is, and I was almost a bit hesitant to even use this at all, but I think I will, because again, I don't want this section coming off. So, but we're going to use really just a little bit. So we're going to put a little bit on one side of the collar, and maybe a little bit on the other side of the collar, like that. And maybe a bit here and a bit there. But we want to just keep it less is more in a lot of the time with these sort of things, just because we don't want it smearing, we don't want it smudging, and also we don't want it expanding too much. So the first part of it, and this collar is very, very tight. So we're going to put all that back on there and push it on as such. So that is back on with a bit of your epoxy holding it all in. So that's a good start. That has somewhat worked. The next step will be putting your nib back into your housing. So that's just threaded. So we should be able to push that in as such. We're going to hold the nib like that and turn it on. And you can see that sitting quite well. Just straighten that nib there, but that to start with is looking quite good. So I'm happy with that to start. The next part, of course, is putting your section in there, which that fits snug, which is really good. And your end little piece will sit on the top there. So as we saw earlier, that will turn up and down and will slide in and out as required. I was going to put a bit of epoxy on these threads. They initially had them on these threads and the barrel side over the top. I am a little bit hesitant to do it. I don't really see the reason why. I feel like these converters don't last forever, and it doesn't really make sense in my eyes to use epoxy on there. But what you want to see is this little piece should pop out the top once we start to thread that on, I'm hoping. the issue we've got at the moment is that when I try to twist this on, I'm actually just turning the section on on this little middle area. So it's a little bit hard to know how to deal with that. But for the meantime, if we pull that out and we turn that, we can see that that is actually, of course, turning the piston, and that should pop back in and should all sit on properly. So that's a really good start. And the cap, of course, never had issues. So how I'm going to fix this issue, I might have to remove the nib assembly and turn it all around. So we'll go from there. Okay, so my plan is, so the issue was that we couldn't thread on the barrel because the section would just spin as you were trying to put it all together. So what I'm going to do is I've just pulled the section forward a little bit, which gives me a little bit of this plastic space. And what we're going to do is grab some pliers and hold that really tightly while we thread on the section as far as it'll go, which I believe is about there. And then we'll be able to push down the section so we can see. It should all hopefully fit together is the plan. So when this eventually epoxies together and all dries, I don't think I've done that quite properly. As you can see, there is a tiny little space there. So I think I'm going to have to pull this forward again. Hold on to that section. Just make that a little bit tighter. And then push that down. There we go, that's got rid of that little space there. So the section has, as we saw earlier, a bit of epoxy on it. So when that epoxy dries, it'll stop that spinning, of course. And so now what we should have is this end little knob should pull out, which it does, and should turn the piston up and down, which obviously effectively fills and releases the piston inside the pen and fills the pen. So that is hypothetically what should work, but it's good to see it's all back together. The cap, of course, should just fit on, which it does. And as you can see, it is in much better condition in terms of it's not squished and damaged. It's not perfect, but all things considered, it is looking a lot better than it was. So I'll grab maybe a glass of water and we'll make sure that it fills up. All right, I thought this angle might work a little bit better to show you, but if we take off your cap and pull out your little end knob as such and dunk it in the water, turn up your little piston. That's not good. Okay, interesting. Doesn't look like it's grabbing onto the piston anymore, and I'm not sure why, so. Okay, so not sure what's happening, but it doesn't seem to be filling, which is devastating. It also looks like this end knob, it should stop when it reaches the point of course, the piston is open or closed, and it's not stopping. So my wonder is if it's somehow detached from the piston, or potentially it's the actual cartridge converter is spinning inside the pen and not actually sealed properly, potentially. So we're going to have to do a bit of dismantling, and I didn't want to have to unscrew anything because it's all together now, but it is not working, so we're going to have to figure out what's gone on there. My thought is the barrel is going to be the best thing to unscrew, so we're going to have to pull off your section. Thankfully the epoxy hasn't dried just yet, but I think we're going to have to pull off the section, remove the barrel, and figure out what's gone on. I'm so hesitant to glue in the piston, but I wonder if we're going to have to actually epoxy in the cartridge converter into the section, because otherwise this is going to keep happening. And my other consideration was the nib section. If somebody was wanting to remove the nib to clean it, it's going to just attach from the cartridge converter inside the pen. It's going to have to come apart once again. So that's not ideal, and it's such a bizarre way to actually design a pen that you can't access the cartridge converter at all. But looks like that's what we're going to have to do. So what we'll do firstly is grab your section, which has drying epoxy on it, which is not great, but anyway. And we'll use the little pliers once again to grab the barrel, which I had hoped we wouldn't have to unscrew this again, but we do. Yeah, so you can see the cartridge converter isn't even connected to the piston, to the nib section, which is very bizarre, really. I don't understand why they would design a piston that looks like this. It actually is still connected, interestingly, to your end piece, but it's just not connected all the way up the front. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull all that out. It's good to know that doesn't come detached though. That's still nice and tight. It's just up here when it connects into your piston, or connects into your nib section, that it's not holding quite properly. So we might need to do what they did initially and put a little bit of epoxy on that section there. So, because otherwise it's going to keep coming out. So if we, again, I would rather not do this, but I don't know, we're going to have a lot of options. Okay, so the decision, I think, what we're going to have to do, I've taken off the barrel once again, and you've got your collar, which has got epoxy on it, and your section as well. I think we're going to have to put a little bit of epoxy just on that join there. So where the section, this connector section, meets the piston, because otherwise if it keeps falling off, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare to keep removing the barrel and fixing it up every time. So we've got our equal parts of epoxy, which we will mix up as such. I'm amazed how quickly that first part has gone hard. It's really like a rock, which is good in terms of, you know, it does get hard quite quickly. So what we're going to do is put a tiny bit of epoxy, if we can, just in here on that join. Because of course we don't want to put it too high up and it doesn't hold. So I feel in that join there is going to be optimal. And even really we could have put it inside that section too. But I feel like on that join is not a bad spot, because I definitely don't want to put it too high and it sort of starts impeding on these threads. So I think just a little bit there, which I'm hoping will dry quickly. And also I don't particularly want to put it on the threads, because I really need this to be able to be removed, the barrel to be able to be removed if required. Because the issue I had initially, of course, was that the barrel wasn't able to be removed, and that just causes all sorts of issues. So what we're going to do now is put the barrel back on. Once the barrel starts to thread, I'm going to pull forward. If we can hold that. That's right. That looks like that's actually going on quite well. So now that that epoxy is dry on the section, it's not going to spin, which is nice. So let's hope that that's all together now. if we take out that piston, that should open and close and should stop once it's open, which it's not. I don't understand why it's not stopping. Could it possibly have come out again? I'm not really sure why that's happened, to be honest. It should have connected together your nib and your piston back here, because now we've got that bit of epoxy on there, so it should have all joined together, but it doesn't look like it is joining together. And the last thing I want is just for the piston to spin, so we might have to take it all apart again. Again, not what I wanted to do. Oh, God, it's really tight now. Okay, so the piston had come unstuck once again. I'm not really sure why when I thread the barrel on it is getting unstuck, so I'm going to have to put a bit of epoxy. Again, didn't want to do it, but don't really have a lot of options. I'm going to put a bit of epoxy inside the threads there, like it had initially, with the hope that once it all epoxies together, which I might just leave it for a bit to epoxy and to hold, because as we saw earlier, it does hold very, very quickly. My thought is once this holds and dries, we'll then be able to put on your NP. So it does actually work. It's just an issue of getting it so the barrel doesn't. So the barrel is spinning at the moment, which means, of course, you've got no idea when it's full and when it's empty, which means obviously is not what you want. So what we're going to do is wait for this to dry, and once that's dry, hopefully it'll go back together. So we will see how we go. I'll come back once it's dry. Okay, so here we are back after about 40 minutes of letting it set. So as you can see there, it's all nice and glued in, and it's nice and solid as well, so I don't feel like that's coming out again. And we can see that nib there, again, the palladium nib, which is all looking quite nice. So we're going to try once again to put it all back together and hopefully have a little bit more luck than last time. My other consideration was that this little turning knob is quite tight and I don't want it to come out, so I was just considering that if you do pull that too hard before it was glued in, that might not have helped with it actually pulling out of the pen. So we're going to put the section back on so we can see this section piece has, I'm assuming, is now nice and tight and glued, so it shouldn't spin as you saw before. So it should all be glued and on and ready to roll. So we'll hold your section. It is somewhat tight threading on here, but which is good. I don't want it to come off. So that is now, as you can see, all in line, which is excellent. Your little piston filler is coming in and out nicely as well, and your cap should fit on there quite nicely with that interesting hook safe mechanism that Visconti have on a lot of their pens. So you can see it's a nice system and works quite well. You can also see once again the lovely polish and shininess of this pen, so it is looking quite nice. So we'll take off the cap and we will get our glass of water, so we've got over here. Now what we're hoping to see, of course, is when we pull up your little filler, and turn it, it's actually up at the moment. So if we put it all the way down and all the way back up again, hypothetically, it should all be full, and you can see that's stopped, which it wasn't doing last time. So what we're looking for, if we get nice and close, is when I turn down your little filler, the water should obviously come out of the front, which it's doing, so that's great. So it is now holding ink or water, which is great, really good to see. And if we come back over here, if we push down your little filler knob as it's supposed to, it's nice and tight in the pen, which is great. So that has been quite a process, but effectively what we've done quite a bit on this pen now, but we've reseated the nib, we've taken out the barrel, we've glued it all back in, similar to the section. We've completely changed the internals of the pen, so now it inks and holds ink, which is amazing. We've fixed the filling system, and now I'm going to have to fill it up with proper ink and do a bit of a writing sample for you so you can see how it all works. But thank you so much for watching my prolonged restoration. I hope you've enjoyed it. Okay, now we're at the point of a writing sample and filling this pen. The ink I thought I'd use is Van Diemen's European Honeybee Eater Nape. It's a bit of a long phrase. There's not a lot of ink left in this bottle, so we might have to sort of turn it, but obviously we pull out your end knob, we dunk it in the ink. Is a Visconti Divina. It's a lovely soft nib, actually. This is the Desert Springs model. It's a 23 carat palladium nib. And it writes very well. Nice and wet and nice and soft as well. And the ink is Van Diemen's. Let's just say European Honeybee Eater Nape. That's a bit of a easy way to do it, but it does write very, very well, which I am very, very happy with. Looks like it's holding ink really well. And we'll push in that little end piston knob, and you can see that sits in as it should. So very, very happy with that restoration of that pen. It's now working very well and looking lovely. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and please let me know if you've got any questions at all.